Zero Endz. Okay, hello everybody. Zero Ends here. Zero Ends here, and I have a special person that's on the line. Go ahead, Mr. Miller.
I wasn't ready to present. I was just calling you right quick.
I know, but tell the people, because this is your Ends channel, of what you are about to unveil.
Well, a book that Dr. Sebi said that never existed. That's a book on food gene consistency.
And this book is not only has certain information from records, but also what do you call it? It also breaks down the genetic side of food as well, DNA as well. Am I right, Mr. Miller?
Yes, sir.
So this is gonna be the first book in existence that breaks down everything that a person or human should know about what is food, what's the purpose, what foods that people should pay attention to, and maybe a solution if possible, because I have the PDF, but I haven't really gone through it. But it gives a real clarity of what. I'm gonna be honest with you, people. This book gives clarity of the 21st century problem in regards to diet people. And I think this is going to be the last type of book in existence in regards to what food is and what's to come. You get me? In short terms. I don't know if I said it right, Mr. Miller.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, like Chaos Rain will let you on a future show on that.
All right.
And he'll probably break it down much better. This is Zero Endz actually, so but like I said, it's a good heads up. Thank you.
Okay,
people.
sure.
Yeah. Hold on. That's Mr. Miller, everybody. He's the one that was on Chaos Rain's channel last year, talk about disease and food. If you're not familiar with that channel, subscribe to it, and also look for those the previous streams on that, and probably upcoming streams. But nonetheless, we're gonna go into the information at hand. I'd like to thank everybody for the podcast, the YouTube, those that's gonna follow this, like it or leave comments. I would appreciate. Let me see. So let me do one more thing and we will get started. I'm going to go for this. All right, let us begin. Let me find my PDF. I'm trying to find it right now, guys. I'm trying to find the page, man. All right. The last part from the last reading, we stopped at emotional eating. So that's the continuum. Oh, and if you have thoughts and opinions of what is read or how you feel, please, like always, leave your comments at the end of this. All right, emotional eating. Harrington Crowler and Shippard, 2010, notes that much of the research on eating pathologies has been performed on populations of white women. The prediction of eating disorders often identifies for those or these populations include mortification about body and physical development, impulsivity, and effective management dysfunction, which Harrington all speculates that the issues might be slightly different for Black women who engage in dysfunctional eating behaviors, suggesting that trauma might contribute to the formation of such patterns. To this end, the research considers binge eating as a might relate to a correlation of two factors: overeating and trauma, and cite binge eating research conducted by Devere Moltenberg and Smith Merdinger and Crosby, and in studies of Garashimi and Tyre from the years 2003 and 1999, respectively, as cited by Harrington in 2010, and this is page 470. Perhaps differently from anorexia, nevrosis, bulimia, binge eating represents a loss of control over the compulse. represent a loss of control over the eating behaviors becomes the act of compulsive. These binge eating studies suggest that the compulsive eating arises from a desire to silence other thoughts or concerns. The act of eating is emotionally numbing and provides a brief escape from the myriad concerns which are providing overwhelming parenting. Notably suggests that the self silencing, prioritizing others' need above one's own and adopting external standards of self evaluation may also play a key role. That's from Harrington. Binge eating and its likely outcome, obesity, have been shown empirically to have a link of childhood mistreatment. The behavior of emotional overeating or binge eating occurs at higher rates in Black population than white ones. And this is from Sturgill, Moore, Domes, Hooks, Scrubber, Crawford, Daniel, and there's a bunch of other names. This is from 2005. And we go straight down, and there's more names that I'll probably leave out. Compare two populations of women, and this is from Bird and Truffhoman. The population of women, one white, one black, draws from a large region of central New England in order to access the prevalence of recurrent binge eating behaviors. The sample include 1,628 black women and 5,741 white women who responds to phone interviews seeking information on overeating and loss of control and purge vomiting behavior and the use of diarrhea or laxatives. And mind you, you're not supposed to take a laxative every day, people. If you had to take a laxative every day for problems of having proper bowel movements, you need to go see your specialist, your doctor. I'm telling you that personally. Responding were also surveyed using a modified version of the General Health Questionnaire, GHQ, to a certain presence of psychological distress related to MOD or anxiety symptoms. Disruptive data on height and weight was solicited and used by the research to arrive at approximate BMI for the subject. Sturgill Moore. Finding indicates that the rate for black women and white women engaged in binge eating at least once during a given 3 months period were essential equivalent at 8.4%, 8.8% respectively. However, when the research adjusts for recurrent binge eating behavior, defined as a minimal of twice a week on an average over that same 3-month period, significantly more black women report recurrently binge eating behaviors by 4.5% than did white women 2.6%. Both cohorts engaged in purging at similar rates, or purging in the same rates. However, black women show a much greater rate of laxative, 2.1%, versus 0.8%. Diuretics, 2.9%, Viva, 1.7%. Or fasting strategies, 4.1% versus 2.7%. Then did the white woman in the study. The project BMI score for the cohort suggests that the recurrent binge caters, regardless of race, were overweight. The research also reports that the women report recurrent binge eating were also the subject to reports of the most significant levels of psychosociological distress or psychological distress. As a response to trauma, compulsive overeating or binge eating may be a way to individuals to attempt to regulate their emotions. which I find that that's a correlation why most women can't really control their eating habits. Usually everything is emotional. So if you have a problem with your emotion or keeping emotions in a intact, you might fall in this category of eating uncontrollably, which overeating will result in more gain in weight without proper exercise. Because what you put in, you have to come out, put out as well, ladies. Maybe way of individual attempts to regulate emotion. The effects regulations models of binge eating holds that compulsive eating occurs when it is triggered by a negative memory or an intense emotional response by Harrington, 2010. As reference to research shown that self-silence also serve as a trigger for overeating. Franco, 2005. In his study, the study of depression and coping behaviors like smoking, eating disorder in blacks and whites, adolescent females populations indicate that the greater the girl degree of depression, the greater experience of an eating disorder. However, the findings of what it calls Sturgill Moore in 2000, research indicate that recurrent binge eating report the highest degree of what they call psychological distress. This act up situation in which consultation is unclear. Does depression trigger emotional overeating? That's a question mark. Or does emotional overeating triggers depression? I'm gonna try this, and I'll say from the two questions, I will say both. Because in the state of Black people, Black America, you are in a constant state of unease, depression, distress, and it will lead and trigger to a lot of things where you're doing uncharacteristic things to your health and your well-being mentally and spiritually. So I will just say it's both. This may speak more to correlation affecting rather than direct causal ones. Next section. Coping behaviors. Murray on 2003 observed that the coping behaviors associated with superwoman image by Benoff, LaFonte, 2005, Harrington, 2010. Trying to achieve perfection through managing of others' needs and expectations have been shown to increase stress in women and negatively impact psychologically and physiologically by well-being, producing greater distress, depression, and anxiety, and increase the risk of high blood pressure and what they call cascade of health problems that proceeds from the condition. The typical coping behavior associated with superwoman image are avoidance and nature, taking the emphasis of self and placing it on others. Distractions, generalized anger, and denial are avoidant coping strategies that have been linking to poor blood pressure regulations and poor what they call glycemic control. Furthermore, research was indicated that patients with diabetes, hypertension, and arthritis experience poor adjustments when they engage in avoiding cope. So you have to cope properly, ladies. Hold on. There is evidence that Black women who engage in active problem-focused coping strategies are better able to manage stressors in their lives. Resolving stressors through a direct approach may be linked to lower blood pressure levels in Black women dealing with epidemic stress. And this is by William Spencer Jackson of 1997. There are relatively few studies exploring coping behaviors in Black women, and fewer still exploring the connection between Black women beliefs about mental health issues and the barriers to getting treatment by Ward, 2009. Employ the common sense model, CSM, in their analysis of Black women beliefs regarding mental illness to identify and explain patterns of coping behaviors exhibited by a sample of Black women. The CSM postulate that individual-based choice on the representation of health, treat, or illness that they construct information informed by their own observation. Experience value, education, cultural traditions, community norms, and relations with families and friends by Ward, 2009, page 1592. The general categories of representation captured by CMM are identified: cause, timelines, consequences, cures, or controllable illness, occurrence, and emotional representation. Ward, 2009, sampled a group of 15 Black women divided into age-based cohorts. 5 women comprised the young group, 25 to 45. That's roughly 20 years of years of age. 5 more comprised of middle age groups, 46 to 65. Another close to 19 years or close to 20 years. And the last 5 made up the older group, 66 to 85 years. Over half the sample reports that they have been diagnosed with some type of emotional eating, with depression being the most common mental illness to appear. In the young cohort, 4 of the 5 subjects report some form of mental illness, while 2 women each in the other 2 cohorts are also report mental illness. The research conduct semi-structured face-to-face interviews with the question derived from the CSMM representation. The research also obtains background information via the demographic questionnaire. Many of the young and middle-aged women attribute depression and other mental illness to culturally specific causes such as racism, sexism, and the effects of dual oppression, and the historical weight of discrimination against Blacks in the U.S. While many of the women acknowledge the difficulties of mental illness and the potential for it to be addressed through treatment, there was a clear rejection of medication as a way to treat the illness, ignoring the findings of Nicolaitis. And this is from 2010 study. Ward, 2009, reports that a term arriving an illness coherence emotional. Representation and the subject of Black women strength was raised by many of the subjects, and the preference, coping strategies, and the merge of the interviews with the women was to essential deny or ignore the mental illness and to engage in efforts to normalize the condition by accepting it as a natural condition in life. When a disturbance associated with such illness became too difficult to ignore or carry, many of the women cite informal support networks or slightly more structured communities. Support network, many of the women also notes religion or spiritual support pursuits through contact with a pastor or church community, or through private prayer and the readings of the Bible. It is interesting to note that the women in the etc. 2009 studies were offered the opportunity to participate in a debriefing session following their participation in the research efforts. This briefing session was explained to them as an opportunity for them to discuss what they studied was about, any thought or concern that came up for them, and refrain to any mental health interventions or counseling service they might be interested in. If needed, only one of the Black female study subjects opt to take advantage of this briefing. All right. Merritt in 2003 reports a similar finding from their research on Black women's coping with mental illness or distress. The majority of the women they serve cite prayer and other expressions of spirituality as the coping strategy by frequently employing an effort to manage their pain. The research described a community based group for Black women who lost a child to violence or has similar tragedies. The women subscribe to the statement, "We take care of our sisters and we don't have time to be depressed." According to the research, Merit 2003, NIH, Element 1, Para, and number 2, the perspective is consent with the superwoman or strong Black woman image. Next section. The Strong Black Woman, which obviously is one of the main few titles. But before I say that, my thing with going to church and praying your problems away, I'm telling y'all right now, people, that's not really effective. And I'm telling you why. Because what Black people suffer is something that's passed down and is now embedded in genetically. To reverse this, you need actual counseling. That means you take your butt to a therapist. You get a psych evaluation, and you take on a few days, maybe a few sessions. Once it's diagnosed, you take the necessary treatment. After treatment, now you go through the lengthy trial of life to really start to deal with your problems. That's how therapy is supposed to work. And a side note, if you want better guidance or recommendations, go check Quasar Khan or Audrafo. You'll find my YouTube. Just type in Quasar Khan. Let's continue. The Strong Black Woman. The most silent characteristic of the icon of the strong Black woman is her strength. Ramon 2000 discussed studies noticing that young Black women use the term strong is describe their self-identity with great frequency. As to explain the description of these young women generally reference one or both of two variables on the theme of strength. The first is that they are strong and preserving over societal genders and race bias, and in embracing their roles as demographic outliners in the culture of America life. A second intention of the term strength as a self-identified for many of these young women was the idea that they possessed the unshakable sense of self that they maintain regardless of their influence. Another key feature of the strong Black woman identity is the nurturing not just the family, but of the larger Black community. An intimate relationship that has led to the evolution of a notion of families in which the Black woman is dominant. See that? The extreme expression of this idea is the role of the single Black mother in American culture, which is now considered culture now for the last I would say 42 years. Arguably, one of the enduring legacies of racism in America is the disenfranchisement of Blacks from equal opportunity to improve their conditions. Waits, 2008. It was less than 50 years ago that the last vintage of institutionalized segregation were swept away, and since that time, blacks have realized significant mobility inside in terms of economics, culture, politics, and educational achievement. In 2008, election of black of the election of Barack Obama to office and president is commonly regarded as the proof of American society trumps over the distribution of relationships race relations since the nation was first established. However, as indisputably significant as Obama's presidency is, it does not mitigate the fact that black men constitute a disproportionately high number of the inmates in American prison. See that? Even this woman discovered during the time this no good president was in office, it did not change the effect of reducing the amount of black men that's in jail. And the funny thing about this, because this is really focused on, but I like she put this in this I guess dissertation or for a PhD, that it shows that no matter who's in office, if they're not changing policy to the people that's already disenfranchised, it's all a waste of time. I quote. Black men continue to have the highest incarceration rate and not incidentally the lowest high school graduation rate of all race and ethnic groups in America. Davis, 2006. The black man, particularly in the lowest socio-economic groups, significantly marginalized in their potential to develop an identity as proven to black women have largely assumed the role with the black culture. White. Romero, 2000, suggests that the strong black woman may actually be drawn romantically to men they believe may need fixing, devoting themselves to making these men better. Page 231. Wayne, 2008. He describes the binary definition of strong black women and weak black men, and note that the conversion of the relationship strong men and weak women is perceived as the traditional white gender dynamic of a powerful and dominant white male and a submissive, yielding white female, and that this dynamic becomes the cultural ideal one for being the dominant message. Acceptance of this construct brings an internalization of the ideal that the weak black man is not the real male, and that the strong black woman is not authentically a female. This internalization can lead to process of self-loathing or acceptance of racial and gender distinctions. Separatism associated with the construct intend to be an even power image. The strong black woman has over time proven a complicated and perhaps a dangerous model for black women to emulate. Let me read that again. Intended to be an even powered image, the strong black woman has over time proven a complicated and perhaps the dangerous model for black women to emulate. See that? I don't know if we're getting right into the meat of things, but it tells you even the notion telling you strong black is considered problematic and it's dangerous because you're not building up and you create more separatism between your man, and you're going to be lonely and die if things play out right, broke. Anyway, what it called Truffman and Pohl, 2010, describes how aspects of strong black women ideology has been taken to create the sense of black women as the ultimate observers. Women not disturbing or dainty or disturbing or dainty by a manner of adversity. One second. Okay. While that may sound like an ideal to aspire to, it doesn't sound like a particular human one. Perfection, while generally held to be a lovely thing in theory, is something entirely unnatural. Flaws are natural. Imperfection is truthful. Pain is part of life. And sometimes it is necessary for the strong to allow others to carry them for a while, if for no other reason than to give them a brief respite while they recharge in order to resume their strength. But for Black women who internalize the strong Black woman, superwoman message, any emotional expression or behavior that falls short of a demonstration of untouchable strength may appear or who appears to be a failure that can negatively impact their self identity. For all its pur- purport strength, the strong Black woman demands may result in tremendous and devastating fragilities in spirit and health. Wow. Mm. I'm gonna note that. And when y'all go back and hear this, it is pretty much explaining that whole entire paragraph. The strong Black woman, right there. But it's more into this lengthy PDF. So if it gets getting good, I think it's getting better as we go down the line. So let's go on. The physical image. The image of the mammy, the strong, nurturing, and self sufficient caretaker, was a dominant image during the slave years and followed the Civil War. Aunt Jemima, the quintessential mammy, Abdur, Quaker's oats, pancakes mix, and syrup bottles for almost a century, and was pictured as a large beneficiary smile, benevolent smile. And I'm not sure if they still have it now. I think now they said they were going to remove certain slave images because I don't think black people like Aunt Jemima. I'm not sure if that's run by a black person. I gotta do research on that. But anyway, let's go on. Black women wearing a kerchief and apron, an archetype of docile servitude to others, meaning white females or white families. Sorry. It was not until 1989 as the 100th anniversary of Aunt Jemima. So that means Aunt Jemima now is 121 years old now. Because if she came out 1889, that's telling. All right. Anniversary of Aunt Jemima's trademark approach that Quaker Oats updates her image to lose the handkerchief or the kerchief, my fault, and they depict Jemima in a somewhat contemporary hairstyle and wearing pearls, earrings, and update attends to be more in keeping with the image of a mother and homemaker rather than a maid or other servant. But the influence of the mammy image extended and was reinforced well beyond Quaker Oats, advertising mascots, and permanent American culture at all levels, with the mammy an immediately recognized image and the nation, film and television programs, literatures, and textbooks. Romero, 2000. Contends that one of the effects of the mammy art stereotype was that black women internalized the message that their role was to put the needs of others first, meaning that they had to provide for the take care themselves and not expect to be cared for by anyone else. Harrington 2010 suggests that the notion of the strong black woman can be traced back to slavery and the idea of black women were inherently more physical, capable than white women. This was not an advantage, however. The stereotype that black women had a physical and what they call physiological relency that exceeds that of white women reinforced the argument that black women were naturally predisposed to hard physical labor. It was also believed that when separating from their children who were sold into slavery, it was not meaningful in the same way that a white woman would experience separation from her children. The mammy image transcribes the progression of the strong black slave woman and to image of the strong black matriarchy. Wines, page 60 in 2008. Wayne observed that in some quarters, the idea of the strong black matriarchy is tied to what they call divinity and pathology. Because strong black women is perceived as reinforcing of a dominant female paragon, contrary to the powerful male paragon of the dominant white culture. One described by Wayne neatly captures what some social researchers see as pathological at the heart of low-income black communities. Black women are excessively aggressive and unfeminine matriarchy who emasculates their partner and husband. A natural reaction from the men is to either desert their partner or refuse to marry the mothers of their children. Wayne's 2008. This has led Wayne State to a twisted gender dynamic between black females and black males, in which if the black male is to assert his masculinity, he must find a way to dominate the strong black woman who he may perceive is responsible for holding him back inside. Woo! I'm gonna say this. When I when I see when I see the way how black people are in the society, it's not only designed but is deliberately structured for what we see today in the 21st century. When we see young black boys now don't even entertain black women, it's because this was already scripted after, during, and after enslavement. Because, be honest, our women have been really culturalized to be like men. And no way a man's gonna really feel any presence. He has to actually dominate the dominator. Because he is getting held back by the women of his community. And much time women don't want to admit it, he is. Because black men just don't deal with black women, you're gonna see a lot of pushbacks. But like I said, a woman wrote this. So not a man wrote this, ladies. This is a woman wrote this to get a PhD. All right, let's continue. Benoff Lafonte, 2005, 2008, and 2009, was written extensively on the incongruous properties and practical realities of the strong black woman. One of her many compelling observations, which she supports via the literature on black women in American society, is how potent the physical sense of what it means to be a strong black woman can be and the various influence on shaping that sense. The researcher described a black female atlas carries the world on her shoulder, denaturing from her femininity through her prowess of managing everything and not needing anyone. Managing everything and not needing anyone. Mm. Across her writing, Bentnoff Lafonte also notes symbolically describes a black woman as mules, animals that carry a burden, further dehumanizing and desexualizing them. The converse of those lines in the black superwoman image, another commonly employed one in which the strong black woman femininity may be comprised, but her essential womanlessness is affirmative in her life-giving capacity and her further mother Atlas-like instinct to assume the burden of caretaker and nurture all others. With this image comes ideal of solidarity, or they call it solidarity, power through armoring oneself from vulnerability, what Bendolf Lafonte identified as being in the warrior mode. 295, page 107. The research observes that these conflicting messages have emerged or have merged and become entrenched, such that black women in America are often persistent with image of themselves as both highly sexualized and undesirable. Page 114. This is produced the need to create a self-affirming image of black women. Page 113, which is identified with the current projection of the strong black woman. In some ways, this process mirrors the co-opting and ownership of the highly charged term nigger. Mm. While it is words that is now socially unacceptable for whites to use, it is words that is used freely amongst blacks in America, sometimes pejorative, sometimes affectionate. The fact is that the co-opting of the word is an attempt to demand it of its history of power as a negative defier of black people. The morphing of the strong black woman in congrathic over the past 2 centuries from slavery through present day employs of the ideal suggesting a similar progress. And that is, and we'll stop right there. Where's my, I'm gonna note this. So now, hold on guys, sorry. I'm just gonna note that. Okay, so in conclusion to this section is that it is not a myth, it's a reality. Strong black woman is proven in this few section of this particular PDF. I think as we go further down, it's going to be much more telling of analysis of why women think like this way, especially sisters, black women. Knowing is a benefit or is there a consequence? Only time will tell. Well, actually, time is telling right now, as you see in the black community here in the West, is shown right now, the effects of it now. And the future might look very slim. But to get better understanding and clarity of the backgrounds of this illness is only going to lead to healing and action. So, ladies, as we go further down, it might get harder or rougher. We don't know. We shall see. But other than that, I'd like to thank everybody for listening to this podcast. please be on the lookout for the next part of this chapter. And welcome. Hey, what's good, Charles Faulkner? Woo! But anyway, until next time, later.